Do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, telekinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness Monster, and the theory of Atlantis?
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say. I'll believe anything you say. I'll believe anything you say. I'll believe anything you say.
Welcome back, everybody. You know what? I'm not going to introduce who I am. Everybody knows who I am at this point. Everybody knows who you are.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. This is Virgin.
This is Lobo. Oh, jeez, we sound like the Lollipop Clan.
Oh, God. Well, it's, God, it feels like it's been forever since we recorded.
I know, right?
It's only been, what, 4 days, maybe 5 tops?
5, I think.
Maybe something along those lines. It feels like it's been a month.
We talked Saturday. So, yeah, it's been like 5 days.
And we said we weren't even going to have an episode every week. Now it's like, we got to get an episode out.
Like that ever lasts.
Really. Well, this week we have an interview with Mike Kleen, who is a gentleman from Illinois who has written a variety of, I guess I'd call him, he probably would call him this too, a variety of historical, paranormal-oriented books. Yeah, it was a pretty cool interview I had with him. You weren't at the interview, and that was my fault. Let me explain. Lobo wasn't at the interview because I'm basically an idiot when it comes to time.
Come on, don't do that to yourself.
Well, we told Mike, be online at this time, your time, and we'll be online at a certain time, our time. And for whatever reason, I was thinking that Chicago, or Illinois, I should say, was ahead of us in time zone when actually they are behind us. So we logged on, and we were actually, 2 hours early, I believe, what we were, something like that.
Yeah, it would have worked out great if he lived in Nova Scotia.
Yes, exactly. And you had to do some stuff with the family because of the holiday weekend and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing the interview on my own.
Yeah, I know, and I feel terrible.
No, it was cool. It was. I do realize, though, I thought, because when I first interviewed Chad on the 13 Skulls, it wasn't really that big of a deal. Chad's a real easy guy to talk to, and we had talked back and forth through the internet, so we knew exactly what we were going to talk about. And he's a local Michigander boy, and he's familiar with the city and stuff. So for him, it was really easy because we're both kind of local. Right. Mike was different because Mike was from Illinois, and I hadn't really had a chance to really touch base with him too much before the interview. So I did briefly say, hey, this is some of the stuff that we're going to touch on, and is there anything you want to talk about? And then we just kind of went from there. And then the audio problems began.
Yeah, dude, what was up with that?
Well, okay, we had a lot of really weird stuff happen recording this interview. I'm not going to say that it was paranormal-oriented. I did not get any EVPs. I didn't get any backmasking. Nothing weird happened like that. But while I was recording the show... go ahead.
Before you go any further... all paranormal means is outside the realm of normal.
Well, as I was recording the show with Mike, and thank God we didn't do a video interview because he would have saw my face with looks of, oh my God, what the heck is going on? In a nutshell,
horror.
Yeah, abject horror is a great way to describe it. As I'm recording the interview, we have a little MP3 Skype recorder program that we use, and while I record, I will press a button, and it'll say, now recording, blah, blah, blah. And you can only press that button one time, and then you have to stop recording, and it's a real simple, easy-to-use program. As I'm recording with Mike, a recording button would pop up, and I'd go, okay, that's strange, and then a couple of seconds later, another one would pop up, and then another one would pop up, and then another one would pop up, and it kept doing really strange things as I'm recording the interview. So I'm kind of, and I've edited it out of the show, of course, but I'm kind of stammering along, asking him questions, trying to keep the interview going, but at the same time, I'm trying to keep from having a meltdown because I'm worried that the interview's not recording. in a nutshell, it recorded the show, and then I dropped it into the audio recording studio program that we use. And literally what happened is that the audio in the recording program was rearranging itself as we were recording the show. And what that happened is it sounds very much like when a CD skips. When a CD starts skipping, that was what it did in the recording program. But it wasn't just real quick words. It would be like a whole sentence, and then it would start, and it would do the whole sentence over again, and then it would do the whole sentence over again. And then it would take a sentence that he said or part of something he said at the beginning of the interview, and it would throw it in. And it made editing a real nightmare. The interview was initially a little over an hour long. I did have to cut it down for time, and I also had to cut it down simply because some of the stuff he would be talking, and he would be talking about a subject, and then the interview would just go berserk. And on our end, on the Skype conversation end, it sounded perfectly normal to both of us. There was no weird glitches or anything. There's some volume spikes here and there, which is nothing that unusual for Skype. But the editing process of actually putting it down was crazy. I would get it worked out. I would get everything mixed down. I would go back and listen to it. Another anomaly would pop up. I'd get it mixed down. Another one would pop up. And it just kept happening and happening. Tonight I had to go back and remix the interview one more time because there was music that I put into the show. When I listened to it back, different music was on the audio than what I initially put into the show. So I had to yank it out and put the correct audio back in. It's fine now. It seems to be fine now. I'm going to write the whole thing off as some strange audio glitch, more than likely software related. I definitely don't think it was a paranormal ghost in the machine kind of thing. But I will say that I sent out a thank you, as I do with people that I interview or we have on the show. I sent out a thank you for being on the show message on Facebook, and he wrote back saying that he was on another broadcast, and that person was having electrical strange problems as well. So, hey, who knows? But I'm not going on record as saying that I had a paranormal experience while recording the show. That sounds way too cheesy to me, and that's just not something that me and you would do.
No, we try not to, at least.
But you heard the interview. You said it came out fine, so,
I did, yeah. Absolutely.
But, I guess let's just roll the interview right now, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
All right, man.
Cool. Today with us we have paranormal author, political activist, and I believe movie producer now, Mike Kleen. He's here today to talk about a variety of his books. We're going to talk a little bit about Haunted Illinois, and we're going to talk some of the stories that he has in some of his other books. I've looked at your stuff, and you don't come across to me as somebody who's like a ghost hunter, though I think you've done them. You come across as more of, I would say, like a local historian for urban legends and things like that. Does that seem to fit you?
Yeah, that's very accurate. I consider myself to be a folk historian. What I like to do is look at these stories, these local folk stories and legends and ghost stories, and sort of show how they tell us something about our culture and our history, about local life. And so I'm not very concerned about the truth or falsehood of the story as people who investigate the paranormal might be. But I also have an interest in the paranormal, and so I write about and look into that aspect of things as well. But even though I visit these places to gain information about them, I take pictures of them so I can reference it in my writing, but I don't actually go to the places to quote-unquote investigate them or try to get evidence of ghosts. I leave that up to other people to do.
One of the things that I really liked about your new book, Haunted Illinois, is that you actually have it broken down on like a county basis, where you can flip through the book and you've got county by county in there, specific stories of things that are happening all over the state. I really wish somebody would do that with my state in Michigan, because we've got a lot of cool stuff here. I've actually never seen a book that documents stuff that way, which is neat, because if somebody's going to that state and they pick up your book, they can go, I want to go here and see this. They can, we're in this county, we can go over here and see that. And I thought that was really cool.
I appreciate you saying that. You should tell that to my editor, who I suggested writing a book like that about the Midwest or about the United States. and she didn't believe that people in other states would want to read about haunted places in other states.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, that would be cool because you could plan road trips around that kind of thing.
Well, I thought so too, but apparently my publisher did not feel the same way.
Well, I've read the haunted U.S., the weird U.S. books like Weird Michigan, Weird Illinois, and things like that, and they give you a sampling of the stories and stuff that are in there, but they really don't give you an idea of where the thing is. They vaguely tell you, but they don't tell you a whole heck of a lot because sometimes they don't want people to go and check this stuff out or what have you. Whereas your book, it's really documented really well. I was just going to ask you, that was my next question. Do you have plans on doing anything like this for any other states or anything?
Well, I would like to, and I really wrote Haunting Illinois in order to help myself, to be perfectly honest, because when I would go to many of these places throughout Illinois, a lot of them are stories that aren't very well known, and I never really knew how to find them, and it was always very frustrating because, you read about some of these places on the internet, and like you said, there are a lot of authors who want these places to remain anonymous, that they think that they own these places, even if they're public, like cemeteries.
I can understand private property not giving the directions because you don't want someone who has farmland and people showing up trying to ghost hunt or find some creature out there on private property, but public places, sure, why not?
I indicate at every point where it's a privately owned residence, I indicate such, and explain how it's not a good idea to go bothering the people that live there, but for people who want to. Yes, because people have guns. Oh, yeah, especially out by a place that I went to recently in a highly rural area. My friends and I drove past this street sign that had been riddled with shotgun pellets, so it's definitely that stuff happens out there. But I wrote the book mainly so that I could have a guide to find some of these places. So I just started writing all this information down, and I said, wouldn't it be nice if there was a guide out there that just sort of cataloged all these places and had directions to them and had sources where they could go and get more information about it. And so I just started writing the book. And originally I published it myself on my own publishing company last year, but I didn't feel like I had the resources to do it justice and to put it out there as much as an established publisher was. So I sort of shopped around, and luckily Thunder Bay Press, which I believe is actually based in Michigan, they decided to pick it up. And so I added 70 new places, a whole bunch of pictures. I had my illustrator make new icons. So I really made the book as complete as I could, but to be perfectly honest, I could probably add about 50 more places easily.
That
in
was
a later
something else
edition.
that blew me away was the sheer volume of material you had through your book. It's like, wow, this is just packed full of stuff, and now you're saying you could add more to it.
Oh, yeah. If you turn over a rock in Illinois, you find a ghost. I mean, it's really ridiculous. I actually had to sort of cherry pick in certain areas and say, well, there's about 10 different places here, but what are the more interesting stories? And I just picked like one or two from those areas. And of course you have Chicago, which has an innumerable amount of haunted places. I stay away from private residences for reasons we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
But there are some homes in there, but only homes that really have been talked about in other books that appear regularly in newspaper articles. So really they're well known in the community. It's not just someone's house that I decided to include in there.
How does one go about getting into all this stuff? What made you decide, okay, these are stories and I want to capture them and put them down to preserve them? How did this route start for you? If you could tell us how quickly, or if you can, how someone would get into doing it, or how you got into doing that.
Well, I'll give you the summary. I never had an incident that made me interested in the subject. I've always sort of been interested in it from a very young age. A lot of the books that I read when I first learned to read were books about ghosts, and the interest sort of continued until I was in high school, and then I could drive, and suddenly, instead of reading about the places, I wanted to visit them. So me and my friends would go and visit places around the Chicago area. I grew up in the suburbs, in the suburb of Des Plaines, to be exact. And so we would try to find the places that were in some of the books from the area. it took us, several trips to find Bachelor's Grove, which was one of the first places we wanted to visit, of course.
Yeah, that's a well-known one. Now it seems like you can find that real easy, though, because it's all over the net now.
Yeah, you just follow the line of people that are walking in.
Yeah, but, that's what I've been told by people who have gone there. Everybody's like, yeah, we've been there before. You can't really find anything because there's always people walking around. And
yeah, it's a big tourist attraction now. But basically, I started writing about it when I went to Eastern Illinois University, which is located in sort of a small town in east central Illinois called Charleston. Some of your listeners may be familiar with a story from Charleston. It's about the ghost of Mary Hawkins in this dorm room called Pemberton Hall. It's a pretty famous story from Illinois, and that but other than that particular story, none of the other haunted places or stories from Coles County had been written about, and I found out that there were many of them. Just to name a few off the top of my head, there was St. Omer Cemetery, where there's a witch's grave. Of course, the Madgasser Mattoon, which we could get into later.
Mm-hmm.
Ragdoll Cemetery, Ashmore Estates. Ashmore Estates has gained prominence in recent years after it was turned into a haunted house. And there's actually, this year, there's going to be an episode of Ghost Adventures about Ashmore Estates, which I was interviewed for. So basically, I just started writing about them because there wasn't a lot of information about them out there. And I decided that I would start writing newsletters called the Legends and Lore of Coles County, which sort of was a springboard into writing more about the rest of the state. After I completed that series, I started writing the Legends and Lore of Illinois, in which every month I would come out with a new issue in PDF about a different haunted place in Illinois. And that lasted between 2007 and 2010. So that really propelled me into the limelight, I guess you could say. People started wanting me to come out and talk at libraries and events, and so it just sort of spiraled from there.
I'm going to ask you about a couple of cases from all three of your books. First one I'm going to ask you about, because my co-host couldn't be here tonight, and he wanted me to specifically make sure I ask you about this and about what your opinions of it are, is the Enfield Horror. I believe, Enfield? Yeah, Enfield Horror, I believe it's pronounced. I guess that's one of the more well-known hauntings in Illinois?
Yeah, I wouldn't really describe it as a haunting. It was a really strange encounter in the 1970s, when a lot of these sort of creatures were encountered in Illinois. And this happened outside of a small town in southern Illinois, I guess along the railroad tracks, where some people saw a strange three-legged creature with pink eyes and sort of like Tyrannosaurus arms, like tiny little arms.
Okay.
And I guess it just sort of ran around this town. And there was a local radio DJ out in Indiana named Rick Rainbow, who came out and supposedly recorded the cries of the creature. So I think that one is well known simply because of its unusual nature, that it's just so bizarre that people enjoy hearing about it.
Whatever happened to it? Did it just go away, or did the sightings just cease? Was it like a Mothman kind of thing where just the sighting stopped?
Yeah, like most of these creature sightings in Illinois, they went on for a couple of days, and then it just subsided. So no one has seen it again.
I've read on the internet that it hissed like a wildcat and could jump 75 feet at a pop or something like that. Do you know anything about what it looked like over there? Or was this glowing eyes and looked like a Tyrannosaurus or something? Yeah,
with 3 legs apparently. There's actually there's a website out there that has a really good illustration of what it might have looked like. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Do you know if the audio that Rainbow, is that what you said his name was?
Yeah, Rick Rainbow.
Rick Rainbow. God, it sounds like that's definitely a 70s DJ name.
Yeah.
Do you know if the audio was floating around the internet or anything like that?
No, I tried to look for it because I thought it would be really neat to hear, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to find it.
All right, well, moving on here, let me ask you about this other one here. There's the Mad Gasser of Mattoon, since you mentioned that one. That one seems to have a pretty rich history behind it, and it seems to extend outside of Illinois and eventually work its way into it, I believe.
Yeah, I think that some people have had theories that it was connected to some other similar events throughout the country. In my research on the story, in reading the original articles, I never really found those connections to be very compelling. But basically, I mean, the story is that people started out finding like cloths on their porch, and when they would pick it up, it would be kind of damp, so naturally they would go to smell it. Well, they said it had this sort of noxious odor that caused a violent reaction. It caused them to like cough up blood, their lips to chap and bleed, and really sort of horrible after effects. But then it evolved from there into being that people actually smelled gas that would come into their room at night. It was a very hot summer, so they had the windows open, and there would be this sort of kind of odorless gas that would come into the room and paralyze some people. And this had an effect on literally dozens of individuals. So, of course, it caused a panic. And at the time, World War II was going on. So everybody was afraid that, you always had those cartoons and stuff of Nazis with jetpacks, like, and poison gas, attacking the United States. So everyone was very frightened of it. And officials sort of wrote it off as being possibly caused by some fumes from a broom factory that was there in Mattoon. Although the factory had been tested and it wasn't leaking any fumes. And the other explanation was always, they say, mass hysteria. This has been the skeptic's answer. Whenever you see an article about it online, usually they say, oh, well, this is an example of mass hysteria. But people actually were injured in the incidents. I mean, there were, people who found those handkerchiefs and had adverse effects from breathing in chemicals. It wasn't mass hysteria. You can demonstrate that with the physical evidence that was there. So the only thing left is that there actually was somebody who was doing this. And there was a local author from Illinois named Scott Maruna, who wrote a book about it, who theorized that it was actually the work of somebody who had been going to the University of Illinois at the time, and he was sort of disgruntled, and he had a grudge against a bunch of students who had picked on him in high school. And
so he's just going around gassing them?
Right. It turned out that all the houses that had been hit were within a certain radius of his house. So this author theorized that it was this man who basically was out for vengeance, who was a chemistry student, and he decided that he was going to get back at these people by gassing them. That to me seems like the most plausible explanation.
How about the Coal Hollow Road Monster, which basically, from what I can tell by the drawings, looks like Chewbacca?
Yeah, the Coal Hollow Road Monster is called Cohomo. That's our sort of colloquial name for it. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be this three-toed creature that's like a Sasquatch, but coated in white fur. So it's more like a Yeti kind of creature. And it supposedly had 3 toes. It was 8 to 10 feet tall. And a lot of these sightings occurred in the summer of 1972. Now, there have been some recent sightings of the creature, but I always thought it was interesting because the Coal Hollow Road Monster looks a lot like the description of the Murfreesboro Mud Monster.
That's the next one I was going to ask you about. So if you want to lead into that one, go right ahead.
Sure. Well, I always thought the two were connected, like there was a creature that was wandering through Illinois. But I have interesting new information about the Murfreesboro Mud Monster. Apparently, the Mud Monster was actually a hoax. I just recently published a book that's just coming out within the next week or so by a man named Bruce Klein. He's the founder of the Little Egypt Ghost Society. Little Egypt is our sort of colloquial name for Southern Illinois. Well, it turns out that he actually knew the man who perpetuated this hoax. And I won't get into all the details because I want people to read the book. Well, the dime store story is that this man was very eccentric and he liked to play practical jokes. So basically, him and a buddy bought this suit and they snuck up on a couple who were making out in a car, and the couple freaked out and called the police. And after that, the story sort of just took on a life of its own. So I guess my theory was busted about the two monsters being related, but it was very interesting.
The Lake Michigan monster, do you know anything about that one?
Oh, yeah. This was an interesting one that I came across in a book recently that sort of cataloged a lot of old newspaper articles from the 1800s, like really obscure articles. And a lot of them were these reports of this Lake Michigan monster, which I guess was seen between 1867 and 1890. Now, this monster sort of ranged from up in northern Lake Michigan down to the south side of Chicago, and it was very serpent-like. In 1867, there's a fisherman who supposedly encountered it near Chicago's south side, and he said that it was sort of black and greenish in color, and that it sounded like a bull that was bellowing. Now, to my knowledge, this serpent has not appeared recently, but newspapers in the 1800s were very well known for concocting sensationalist stories. That's not to say that nobody did see a sea serpent in Lake Michigan, but it hasn't been seen since. So yeah. Who knows what might have happened to it.
How do you go about cataloging and finding all of this stuff? Do you just go into local city halls and comb through newspapers, or do you have people that send you this stuff? Or how do you go about investigating and finding all of this?
Most of the time, it's found in books. I have a huge library of books about haunted places all over the country, but especially here in Illinois. So there's always books about local areas that have an inordinate amount of tales in them. Like I said, the Lake Michigan monster story came from a book that actually cataloged a lot of bizarre newspaper articles from the 1800s. And it has stuff in there not only about ghosts, but about strange weather events that were reported. That's always an option. And being trained as a historian, I got my master's degree in American history from Eastern Illinois University. And there are a lot of tools that university libraries subscribe to where you can do a search through various newspaper archives. And so if you do a keyword search for haunted or ghost or creature, a lot of these stories will pop up in the different newspapers. So that's where I find a lot of these stories. I don't really hear from very many people. I know a lot of authors get a lot of tips from readers, but I haven't really heard from very many.
So you just go around and you just basically go into like universities and dig through their libraries and see what they have on file.
Yeah, sometimes it can get really tedious. When I was researching about Ashmore Estates, because nobody had really ever written anything about it before, it was just an abandoned old almshouse that was turned into a psychiatric hospital for a number of years. And then it closed down, and so no one really in the local community wanted to have anything to do with it anymore. And the students who were going and visiting it and breaking in and stuff, they didn't know anything about it. So basically, I was told it closed in the mid-'80s. So I got the microfilm reels from the local newspaper and just sat there and cycled through it for years in the mid-'80s until I could come across articles about when it closed. It was a little bit of a masochistic venture, but eventually I did find the information I wanted.
Something else I was going to ask you about, you have a section on one of your web pages, which I believe is trueillinoishaunts.com. Was that one of your pages as well?
Oh, yes. That's the home of the legends in lore of Illinois. But now now that the newsletter is sort of on hiatus, I devoted it more of like a blog where I interview people who are interested in the paranormal in Illinois. I do these top 10 lists and different articles and stuff. So
jumping base again a little bit, when I was browsing through your stuff, I was surprised to find the number of Thunderbird and large bird sightings that your state has. I thought a lot of those kind of sightings were more like a western phenomena or a southwestern phenomena. I had no idea that there were so many of those kinds of things sighted up here in the northern United States.
Oh yes, that's a big sort of cryptozoological creature here in Illinois. We have along the Illinois River, I think it's the Illinois River, it might be the Mississippi River. We have a painting of what people would consider to be a thunderbird, and it was something that that the local Indians had painted up on the rock, and so it sort of reinforces the presence of the creature here in the state. But there have been a number of recent sightings, again in the 1970s. You know, I don't know why a lot of these things.
I was going to say, the 70s were a big period of time for you guys over there. I don't know, maybe that was when, maybe it was something in the marijuana, or.
Yeah, it could have been a heavy use of drugs was the result of a lot of this. But this was a famous case. This was in Lawndale. It was called the Lawndale incident. This was in the summer of 1977. There was a group of birds that attacked these children, and one of them actually carried one of the children 35 feet before they dropped him when their mother scared the birds away.
How big was the bird?
Well, these things are usually described to be about 12 feet at their wingspan. So very, very large birds, larger than the California condor.
To be able to pick up a small child?
Yes, well,
that's huge. Well, they say thunderbirds are very big creatures, though. They're usually reported as like pterodactyl size or something along those lines.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are actually carnivorous birds who can pick up small sheep.
Yeah, that's true. Bald eagles can get rather large along those sizes too. Do you have, and I know you probably get asked this question a lot, of all of the things that you've investigated and you've cataloged, do you have a favorite story of your own that you've ran across, or something you have a personal affinity for, or something that has stuck out in your mind that you've maybe wanted to investigate further?
That is a very good question. I have had some personal experiences that were strange and unexplained, but nothing at any of the locations that I've been to that have been supposedly haunted. So I just like to say that. But there is.
Oh, so you have had stuff happen to you?
Well, I don't like to talk about it too freely, because you never know if those things are real, or if maybe it was caused by some kind of external influence. Yeah, I'm not the kind of guy who will leap to conclusions and say, oh, it was a ghost, and then go around telling everybody that, and then, it turns out later that it was, just infrasound or something affecting my vision. So
yeah, until I see the refrigerator levitate in front of me, and I'll go, okay, that's something weird has happened in there, and I guess I'm not going to get my beer out of the fridge. But,
right, exactly. If there was, if something as dramatic as seeing a brick being thrown without explanation happened, I would be on here saying, oh my God, I saw a brick thrown without explanation.
So did you have a story or anything like that you found that you found particularly interesting or had an affinity for, or do they all start to look the same to you after a while?
There is that problem. A lot of these cemeteries do look the same after a while. One of the things that I've really been interested in lately and what I would like to learn more about is this small cemetery. It's just called the Girls' School Cemetery by a subdivision called Fox Run, which was actually built over the site of the Illinois State Training School for Girls, which operated between 1893 and 1978. Now, this school actually had girls who had been were committed there because they'd either committed a crime or they were juvenile delinquents, and it really, I imagine this having a tragic history, because of the background of these young women and the fact that in the cemetery there's a lot of young women who are buried there who had committed suicide, a lot of tragedy. There are even a lot of young children there and babies, which you can imagine some of these women might have come to the school pregnant or had gotten pregnant, and the babies didn't survive, so they were probably buried in this cemetery.
Yee.
So yeah, with such a tragic background, there's going to be ghost stories there, and the fact that the people living at this subdivision look out their window every day and see a cemetery over there. But the cemetery is actually maintained by the company that built the subdivision. They made a contract with the state that says they have to maintain it in perpetuity. So there's a nice little fence around it and everything. But the stories there, it says in the woods around the cemetery there's supposed to be a specter of a woman in white gown crying and sort of wailing. There's supposed to be a crying infant that's heard. Other people have seen sort of ghosts like walking around the subdivision. So it's a very active story with a great background story. And I was watching Unsolved Mysteries a couple days ago, and they had a story on there about a girl who is being abused by her father, who was a police officer, a Chicago police officer. And in order to shut her up, he had her sent to this Illinois State Training School for Girls. This was back in like the 1950s. So I thought it was really interesting that I just visited this place and then I saw this story about it on Unsolved Mysteries. So that really piqued my interest, and I definitely would like to find out more about it.
Had you any knowledge of what the story behind the place was when you were there, or just only a little bit of a knowledge about it?
Yeah, I knew a little bit about it from newspaper articles and stuff where I'd found the story to begin with. They had a little bit of the background. But see, it sort of sparked a chord with me because in Des Plaines, there's a place called Maryville Academy that was run by the Catholic Church. And that also was like a home for troubled youths. So I used to go there. There was a tiny little cemetery nearby where some of the kids who lived there would be buried if they had no family or anyone who claimed them. So I could imagine what would happen if that was torn down one day and a subdivision built on top of it. That cemetery probably would still be there. So it's fascinating to me because I like to imagine the layers of history at a place like that. And anywhere where there are such layers of history, you'll find ghost stories.
Yeah, you do a really good job of documenting the history behind it. That's why I find your work so interesting, because it's not just the ghost story. You try to put a little bit of a face on what you're talking about, and thus making it more interesting for people to go there.
One of the things I thought about doing was a book that was kind of based on folklore, and it would be an analysis of types of stories from around the Midwest. So, for example, one chapter would be about vanishing hitchhikers, and I would find examples not only from here in Illinois, but from Indiana and Michigan, Wisconsin, all the states surrounding us. That's sort of a project I have on the back burner right now.
And has there been any interest in that from anybody, or is it just something you're just getting rolling around in your brain right now?
No, I'm rolling around in my brain. I think that the current publisher that I'm with will be more open to that. But to be perfectly honest, I mean, I'm starting to be in a position now with my own publishing company that I would feel confident in publishing my own work and having it get out there to the extent that I would be happy with.
That brings me to my next question. How many books on the paranormal do you have, and how do people go about getting them?
Well, I've written a lot of books on the paranormal. I've written a lot of books about political issues. I've written some novellas. honestly, one of the best ways of finding stuff that I've written about on the paranormal is to visit my website, trueillinoishaunts.com. I have a store there with links to books, print books, Kindle books, and Nook books. A lot of them are collections of the issues of the Legends and Lore of Illinois. And for those of you who don't want to download issues from every single place, I have Kindle collections with them all sort of put together. Of course, Haunting Illinois and Paranormal Illinois can both be found on Amazon.com. And one of my novellas, it's a serial novel called Home of the Brave. That's up on Kindle, and it's selling pretty well right now. That's a pretty popular one.
Have you delved into the audiobook realm yet, or any of the spoken word stuff yet?
Yes, actually. I just released my first audiobook last month, at the beginning of last month, called The Creeping Hand of the State and Other Reflections on America's Orwellian Future. That sort of gets into my more political writing. It's not available on CD, but you can download it from iTunes and Amazon.com as a digital download. There are a couple of books that I'm publishing right now that I think your audience would be very interested in. Of course, one I mentioned earlier is by Bruce Kleen. It's called The History, Mystery, and Ghost Stories of Southern Illinois. And then there's one by a woman named Cassidy O'Connor. She's out in New York, and she's written a book about sort of her encounters with a family that's being plagued by some dark entities. And that's going to be called Diaries of the Dark Side. And so that one, I think, will be very, very popular, and I think your audience would find it compelling. There's a lot of drama in there. It's written in sort of a memoir form, from first-person perspective. Of course, all the names and things have been changed. Yeah. To protect the innocent. But that'll be available in hardcover, or not hardcover, in hard copy on Amazon, as well as digitally on Nook and Kindle.
Is that coming through your publishing company?
Yes, I'm going to release that later in July. Bruce Klein's book is coming out first. That should be out fairly soon. In fact, it can be pre-ordered now. But Diaries of the Dark Side is going to be out later on in July, probably about July 20th. I've actually been, before I came on your show, I was diligently editing it all day.
Give them my contact information. When the time comes, if they need to get some publicity out there, if they need to speak with anybody, if they want to send any copies out.
I definitely will.
Put them in contact with me, and because we're always looking for people that aren't in the mainstream of paranormal.
I'm always looking for stories. A lot of the people I interview on my website are not the big names in Illinois. In fact, I've tried to avoid some of the more well-known people, because I want people to know that there are a lot of people out there that are interested in this subject, who are doing a lot of hard and interesting work. The interview that I have this month is with Stan Courtney. He's a cryptozoologist here in Illinois, and he has just done years of research cataloging all these articles about Bigfoot sightings in Illinois going back to the 1800s. And so I really want his work to get out there, and be acknowledged.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. Is there anything else that you want to get out there before I let you go? If you want to talk about your website, how to contact you, things like that.
Sure. My website is The Legends and Lore of Illinois. That's trueillinoishaunts.com. And again, we have top 10 lists. We have interviews on there. The archives of The Legends and Lore of Illinois are on there. T-shirts, all kinds of good stuff. And of course, there's links to all my books on there. And if you want to contact with me, I set up a new address for the Legends and Lore of Illinois. That's just trueillinoishaunts@blackoakmedia.org. So that's my new email address for the Legends and Lore of Illinois. If you happen to have any stories, if you know about any places, or just want to shoot me an email, I'm always looking for people to contact me. So I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody.
Well, Mike, thanks for being on Project Archivist. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on. Hopefully I can speak with you again sometime.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Anytime you got anything coming out or something in the works, just let us know.
I will, definitely.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
All right, so that was Michael Kleen. What do you think?
Wow. After listening to it, I was all the more upset that I couldn't be there for it. I mean, he was some of the stuff he talked about was interesting. Even, I mean, stuff I'd never heard of before. And that's what interested me the most. I think about. I mean, tentatively, that's what interested me the most when we were going into this, and then I ended up not being able to be involved. And then listening to it, I'm like, wow. I think that's what we need to be doing is talking to people about things you don't typically hear people share about.
One of the things that I enjoyed is he wasn't hell-bent on trying to prove if something was haunted or not. He very much is an archivist, and that's what I really liked about what he does, is that he's just there saying, this is the location, this is a history, and he tells people, this is how you get to this place, this is what's here. And he's not concerned about, well, I had a paranormal experience here, you will too, or anything along those lines. He really cares about the history of what he does. I wish, and I hope to God, that he does go out and do a book about other states, and he does this for other states and about things around America. That would be great. But what Mike does is he goes that extra mile to find the obscure and the unknown stuff that most people might not know about, that people want to go out and look at. And he had a lot of really cool stuff to say. Again, I had to take a lot of it out of the interview. He's also a very politically motivated person, and we didn't get into a discussion about some political stuff. He writes, I'm going to mess this up, so Mike, if you hear this, I apologize. I believe he said he writes for an anarchist website or an anarchist magazine. He said, though he himself is not an anarchist, he does have an inherent distrust for the government. And then we went into talk about Nietzsche and how he affected us.
That's just awesome. I mean, to hear someone nowadays or read someone nowadays actually dive into Nietzscheism the way he does is amazing. I mean, it's a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around what Nietzsche believed in. He is a really good way of writing it so the layperson can understand it.
Yeah, it was great to talk to him about it. I was going to save that piece and put it up on the website, so after this show is over with, people could go onto our webpage and just download it. But again, because of the weird audio anomalies, I went to post it up there, and it's gone. A lot of the audio that I tried, usually when I cut audio off, I can put it off to the side. For whatever reason, with this interview, a lot of weird stuff happened that just doesn't make any sense. Again, I'm not going to call it paranormal, but it's actually kind of frustrating because we had a lot of cool conversations about things that I just couldn't put into the show. But I got the meat and potatoes of it. I got him talking about his books. I got him talking about the history. And I got him talking about he's got his own publishing company called Black Oak coming out. And it seems like he's reaching out to people outside of Illinois. And he's going to, because it sounds like he's had problems with his editors about different book ideas. And I think he's just said, out of hell with it, I'm going to do it myself. And God bless the guy. More power to him.
Right. I mean, when your editor comes to you and you have an idea about, like you brought up, wanting him to be able to write more about interesting facts and unknown history of other states, and your editor comes right out and says, well, I don't think anybody would be interested in that. Really? Listening to him, he reminds me of, and I know it's going to sound corny, but he reminds me of someone who would have been drafted by the Library of Alexandria. Someone who sets down the information, gives you the inside information on what he finds, and then leaves it up to you.
Yeah.
A real archivist.
Yeah, because he doesn't put any kind of a spin on it. Like, this is what I think. He just puts the information out there.
Exactly.
And it's, it's not sterile. It's not overly plain Jane.
No.
And then he's also got the cool little stories in there about the different monster sightings and things like that. That was neat. So it's not just a spooky ghost story book either. No. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to him. I really hope to hear about him and his further exploits that are coming out from his company. The woman who's got the book coming out about the haunting in New York sounds really neat. So I'm going to keep my eye out for him. I've told him to keep us in mind if he has anything coming out. Hopefully, Mike, if you hear this, you will.
Yes, please.
Aside from that, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Put out our endorsements, or actually, what do we call it? It's not endorsements.
It's, the shout outs, as we like.
Well, no, not the shout outs. This is what the beggar portion of the episode.
You know what? Hold on that, because I do want to send a shout out. We've been talking about this. We've been talking about another show that me and you both listen to, and we keep forgetting to mention them on the show here.
Right.
And that would be Monster Talk, the Monster Talk podcast.
Oh, man. The latest one that just came out, dropped like 2 or 3 days ago, is phenomenal.
They've got a great show.
They do. I hang week to week waiting for an episode to come out. I mean, the guys that are on there are just, I mean, Ben Radford, Karen Stallsno, and Blake Smith. I mean, every once in a while, Joe Nichols calls in. It's a great show, and the thing is they're skeptics, but they're not your average run-of-the-mill, let's bash everything skeptics. These are intellectuals that actually look at the cases with what a real skeptic is.
They're really easy to listen to. They're not the skeptics that drive me nuts, because I'm not a die-hard, dyed-in-the-wool believer about everything, but by the same token, I can't listen to a lot of skeptics because they're the exact opposite, in the opposite direction, and they just drive me nuts sometimes.
Right.
And these guys, they have a really good show. Go out and look them up on iTunes. That's the only thing I can tell you. Monster Talk, I know they're on iTunes. They have a website.
They have Facebook.
They have a Facebook.
Yeah.
They have a really good Facebook community too. They're really cool to people on Facebook. Well, that's another thing. They don't entirely cover just monsters. You would think they would. They did an episode about the ninja that was great.
Yeah.
I love the ninja episode. They did a H.P. Lovecraft episode talking about Cthulhu and the background behind H.P. Lovecraft.
Blake Smith's a big Lovecraft fan. That was the first episode I actually listened to because I'm a Lovecraft nut.
That's another thing I like. They like they have fun on there, which is cool. Now we can do the beggar portion of the show. So go right ahead.
Well, let's see. We need let's see, 2 Twinkies, a loaf of bread. Wait a minute, no. What do we need?
Bologna. As stated in the last episode.
Indeed. Now we need people to go out on iTunes.
Yes.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I absolutely crave good reviews, because any review is good review.
He does. He's craving them. He's lying.
Nice.
But yeah, please go on iTunes, give us reviews. Please go into other forums and promote our show. Please give a copy of our show to your friends that you think might be into this. Please print it out like religious material and pass it out in front of grocery stores.
We're not Moonies.
Please go into airports, shave your head, and pass out flyers for our show. No, I'm kidding.
I just shaved my head today.
We do have an email, which nobody emails us at because we're on Facebook constantly. It's projectarchivist@gmail.com. We still have our phone number, which is 734-681-0459. I'd also like to tell everybody that if you're listening to the show and you're in a ghost hunting organization and you've got some EVPs and you're interested in talking about your experiences, send us a line. Give us a shout out. We'll listen to what you got. We'll talk about it, and maybe we'll throw you on the show. We're interested in hearing people's stories as well. We'll be back in a few days with another episode. I think we're just going to do another standard episode next week. That's what we're looking at.
We're shooting for?
I guess so. We don't have any interviews immediately lined up. The whole the Tesla discussion is still on the.
When was the last time we did a roundtable?
We'll do another one soon.
Yeah,
another one soon.
Tesla Deathmatch.
Tesla Deathmatch is coming. I think that's it, folks. This is Rojan.
And this is Lobo to a better Connecticut.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to beat this sucker into the ground, because every time my cats hear it, they crack up.
Peace out from the D, folks.
Peace.
So many of us live good, and then so many of us live bad. Is this world coming to? So many of us live good, and then so many of us live bad. What is this world coming to? Is this world coming to? What is this world coming to? Is this world coming to? We seek to destroy each other.
Too much hate. Too much. Too much.
Necessary. Prepare to change for the better.
Do we seek to destroy each other? Do we seek to destroy each other? Each other. Each other. Each other. Each other. Each other.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.